Hello once again, everybody. So I took a look at everybody's comments, and honestly, I think the only one topic idea that got multiple votes to talk about it was specifically the DC film universe and what I think they did wrong, what I would have done, do I think it can be salvaged, how, that kind of thing. So I guess I'll address that one first. Keep in mind that I will still be dipping back into that comment section for topic suggestions, but I will look in this one too. But for now, we're going to discuss the DC film universe. This is something that I've been very long-winded on in the past in other videos and in the podcast that I've been in with Neo Game Spark. But I will say this: it's only because there's so much to talk about, and there was so much potential, and watching Warner Brothers just flush it down the toilet because they're too lazy to do any kind of proper world building. They want all the reward, none of the work, is frustrating as all hell to me. Like, say what you will about Man of Steel. I liked the movie. I still like the movie on its own, as a standalone. I think there was a lot of room to go from there. I understood why they did what they did artistically in that movie. You know, they made it very clear going into it that this is supposed to be a Superman origin and kind of explain how he came to be how he is. I will say that, yeah, I didn't necessarily like the treatment of Pa Kent. Jonathan Kent. But at the same time, there were a lot of other things I liked about it. I said in my review back in the day, I didn't think it was perfect. But I thought that this is a really decent starting point and they could build off it from there. Just like I think a lot of stuff in the original Iron Man has not necessarily aged well. Like, everybody was blown away by it back in the day, but if you look at how the medium of superhero films, comic book movies has evolved over time, and you go back and judge that, it doesn't quite hold up near as well. But as a product of its time and the limitations of its time, and just the ambition of what they opted to start doing there, it blew people away, And I think Man of Steel was looking to be kind of a similar thing. I thought, okay, this is going to be their Iron Man. Now, the interesting thing, though, is that DC had all the advantage because they knew what Marvel did to make their universe work. They knew everything that they had done. They knew the missteps Marvel had early on. Like the fact that they didn't do enough to differentiate the Incredible Hulk from being a sequel to Ang Lee's Hulk. Or, what have you, Iron Man 2, when they tried to stuff way too much into one movie in terms of universe building. When they easily could have spread that out between more films, because it's not like this thing alone is carrying its own continuity, just all kinds of things that they had the benefit of being able to learn from, and they didn't. And here's why. The Dark Knight films, Christopher Nolan's trilogy, took off, blew up in a big way, made billions of dollars. And when Superman didn't break those billions, even though it did well, they panicked. See, the studio was never actually about cultivating a cinematic universe, and that's something that people need to understand first and foremost. They didn't give two turds about properly establishing this universe. It was never their number one goal. That is one thing you got to give to Marvel. One thing you got to give to Kevin Feige. He cares, and he wants this to turn out as good as possible, and he wants this to be as consistent as possible, and he wants to try to do new stuff, branch out. Excuse me, but still keep the universe, cohesive. DC doesn't care about that. The second that they saw Superman did not make as much money as Batman, even though, Zack Snyder was talking about all these ideas they had for Man of Steel 2, even though David Goyer was on talk shows after the premiere of Man of Steel talking about Man of Steel 2 and potential ideas they had for it, like Brainiac or Mongol or Darkseid being villains. And then suddenly they just went quiet, and everyone's like, okay, we're in the writing phase, and they're gonna reveal Man of Steel 2, at Comic-Con, and then suddenly, they're doing the interviews again, and that's great, and then suddenly they stop talking about Man of Steel 2 right before Comic-Con. And then they go in there, they go on that panel, and what do they have? Nothing. They have a quote from The Dark Knight Returns and that logo. And then suddenly it's Batman v Superman. And that's why they did it. They didn't even care that it didn't make sense for them to be fighting right now. They didn't care that these two characters had never even met, and them trying to kill each other without, even getting to know each other was stupid. They didn't care about any of that. They just knew that an adaptation of The Dark Knight Returns would put butts in seats, because for whatever reason, people are convinced that that's a great Batman story. I personally don't think it is. I think it's good for what it is as an Elseworld story, but the idea that this is supposed to be a great Batman story, a timeless one that's perfectly reflective of the character, especially as we know him in the mainstream, is ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. And it's even more ridiculous to think that about Superman, and that is one reason why I groaned the moment I heard that, because if there's one thing Frank Miller does not get, and one of the big beeps I had with that book, it's Superman. Now, I mean, just think about that for a minute, okay? Imagine if Marvel had gone straight from, say, Iron Man and leapt right into Avengers, okay? But on a smaller scale. Like, we don't have a Thor, we just have Iron Man, we have Captain America, and we have maybe Black Widow. Something like that. That wouldn't be good, would it? I mean, we'd have to get to know Captain America. We wouldn't know anything about Black Widow. And then it would essentially become, Captain America's movie. It would almost have to, because otherwise you would never be able to properly establish him. But if you had Captain America just straight up distrusting, hating Iron Man, thinking that if he could potentially be a threat, make, weapons that destructive, oh, I fought Nazi super weapons. I know what a madman with a super weapon is capable of, and if there's even a 1% chance he could become that, I need to destroy him. What would you guys do? Would y'all think that that was well written? Would y'all have thought that, wow, that was effective? Would y'all have thought, oh, wow, look at the universe building here because they have a few Easter eggs? No. Y'all would have head-desked at that and said, no way. Yet, for some reason, I see so many people willing to accept that literally just because it's DC. And that's exactly what Warner Brothers is counting on. That's exactly what keeps them afloat right now. People are going anyway because it's DC. And it's not Marvel, and they've got themselves Marvel's for kids, and DC is for hardcore fans and adults, and it's like no, it's really not, because I'll tell you this: if you were a hardcore fan, you'd object to a whole lot of the stuff that they are throwing into these movies, but you'd especially object to the lack of care, just the complete, total lack of care going into these films. They don't care. Like I said, they don't care. Someone once said that everybody, the thing about cinematic universes in general right now, and the reason they keep failing left and right when people try to do them, is that everybody wants to make an Avengers, nobody wants to make an Iron Man. Nobody wants to do the legwork to work up to an Avengers. They want it now. They want the success now. They want the explosive, cinematic, profit now. Avengers did remarkably well. It was a historic film. Whether you liked it or not, even if you absolutely hate that movie, that movie made history. That was the first time that something like that had ever been done, where you actually had multiple IPs come together, stay in the same universe, share a timeline, a continuity, and have a payoff like that. And then to find out that it was going to keep going that way, that was shocking. You know, they could have just hung it up right there and said, there, see, project done, experiment done, now we start playing the tape. No, they kept going with that. They're still going with that. They've got that plan through, what was it, 2022, I think? Already? Now, I doubt Feige's going to stay there that whole time. I'm sure he would eventually want to go do other things. I know the Russos do, and that's why after Avengers 4, they're stepping down. Whether they'll ever be back, I don't know. But, you know, it's a big gamble, and it's a lot of risk, and it requires a lot of care. I mean, there's so many things that could have gone wrong. And things that did go wrong. I mean, look at Edgar Wright. He walked off Ant-Man. You know, because they had the nerve to ask him to change a few things about his film for the sake of continuity. Even after conceding to him in so much, like, you know, we want Hank Pym. No, I want Scott Lang. Okay, well, we want him to potentially show up in the Avengers, and then you can make your movie about him later. No, nobody's touching him before me. I am establishing this character. Like, it's like, okay, fine. But we need you to make a few changes to your story here because it doesn't really line up with what all has happened in other movies. And he walks and says that they don't respect artists. Really? Really? They don't respect artists? And then Joss Whedon and his corny ass decides that he needs to chime in support of friggin' Edgar Wright. The same Joss Whedon who then turned around and crapped out a movie he barely cared about. With Age of Ultron. A movie where he decided that he was going to do some of the same stuff Wright was. And that was, you know, oh, I like this idea. So even though it's not really something that's ever been seeded before, we're going to do it. And just look what he did with Black Widow and with Natasha and Bruce Banner. That was never something that was seeded before. And yet the dialogue in the film all acts like, oh, we've noticed this for a while, wink, wink. Oh, yeah, she's had a thing for you for a while, wink, wink. Oh, we know how you feel about her, wink, wink. And the really cheeseball lines, like, first of all, having her imprisoned and having him rescue her in his non-Hulk form, no less. And that whole, I adore you line, like, oh my God. And see, once he stopped caring, look what happened to that. It didn't do near as well, and the public reaction to it wasn't near as well, and he found himself fired. And see, sometimes those are decisions that you have to make, but you have to care. You have to take the risks. And when somebody does something and it really doesn't pay off, sometimes you have to say goodbye. You know, you can't bank on nostalgia or the fact that they've got cred in the community. You can't do that. If they made a bad movie for you, you need to say goodbye. Period. If it wasn't well received, goodbye. Period. And now, oh man, okay, look, here's the thing. If they wanted to do the entire retired Batman thing, I've said this a million times, Batman coming out of retirement because Superman showed up and he feels that they need to have some sort of countermeasure. Say what you will about Christopher Nolan's Batman, and there's a lot to say, and not all of it good. In fact, frankly, a lot of it bad. Especially where The Dark Knight Rises comes in. But he did have detective skills. Certainly more than we see Ben Affleck use in this movie. Okay, in Batman v Superman. And, you know, you could do something with that. You could have him say, I need to look into this. You could have him suit up again and, you know, go find this Superman and talk to him and have it similar to their own original thing where Superman doesn't really trust him and he's a vigilante who works outside the law and I'm not too cool with that, and he's like, okay, fine, but just know that if you tried to lay a hand on me, I have a bomb planted on an innocent person in this city, and if you do anything, it will go up and kill them. And of course Superman's horrified by that. But they have this talk, and Batman has Superman actually help him with something. And when he sees how Superman operates and that he is a genuinely good person, he decides that he can be trusted. And then he reveals that the bomb was actually on himself the whole time. he was said innocent person, and by innocent he meant I haven't, committed any serious crime. And while Superman did not approve of that method and thought that it was frankly reckless and foolhardy and lack of trust, he also decided that you're not quite the monster I've heard you are either. And although they don't fully get along yet, they do part, with some mutual respect. And from there, you could finally go on to bringing back Batman. From there, you could, show that Batman's back in training to get back into shape. From there, you could establish, oh, hey, we have a Robin, we have a, that kind of thing. And now, I'm not saying necessarily that Nolan's films need to be in continuity at all. What I'm saying, though, is that, first of all, that actually would have made more sense than what they did. But second of all, that's the sort of approach that they could have and should have taken with Batman. He needed to approach this a lot more analytically and a lot less emotionally. And that's where The Dark Knight Returns comes in. And that's the reason that I so strongly dislike that too, is it wasn't just something that happened. Okay, Bruce is, when necessary, a very cold, analytical being. In that specific case, he would have, noted that there wasn't really any other choice. He would have noted that the world engines, that they couldn't exactly not do anything about those, and those were destroying the city anyway. He could have noted that Superman is in fact telling the truth when he says that Zod wasn't going to leave those people alone and kept taking that fight back into the city, which was true. But they don't do that. They turn him into a being of pure emotion, and the only reason that worked in The Dark Knight Returns is because it was Jason Todd getting killed, dying, being murdered, that did that to him. One of the few people that he actually, let in, which is something that actually did almost happen in the mainstream comics. It hurt him deeply. It scarred him for a while. So in that context, when it comes to The Dark Knight Returns, that's where that would make sense, but it's not, because that's not even what did it, And that's the thing that gets me. Like, apparently dealing with all the stuff that he has dealt with over the years is not enough for Batman to turn into this crazy branding killing monster. But what happens with Superman is, which by the way they retcon in the beginning of Batman v Superman, the order of events, the speed at which they occurred, like, if I recall, they actually make it look like Superman dive bombed Zod into the building, when in actuality Zod actually grabbed him and slammed through it, and they both tumbled away, and that's when his heat vision started kicking in and he was screaming in pain. But instead they make it look like that was a natural extension and Superman took the fight there. It's stuff like that, man. It just doesn't line up. And when you have to make changes to that to line it up, to potentially give Batman an excuse to do what he does, that doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't. That's not good writing. That's not good filmmaking. Not even a tiny bit. Like, I see amateur films that don't make that kind of stupid mistake. And then, on top of that, oh gosh, just rushing the Suicide Squad was also incredibly stupid. We had no attachment to these characters at all. And you know what? That's another thing. It's confusing too, because if Batman's supposed to be in his crazy killer phase or whatever, when he takes, the Joker's still out there, Batman's in his crazy killer phase, and he never once went after the guy who murdered one of his sons. The worst he did was apparently right after the act, and you don't even hear about this in the movie. This was explained by Ayer off screen in an interview. Basically his headcanon that the reason Joker's got those metal teeth isn't because it's a grill, they're actually fake teeth, and he had to have them put in after Batman literally pounded every single tooth out of his mouth after he murdered Robin. And it's like, okay, that would make kind of sense, but then why didn't he go finish him? Because he still clearly weighs very heavily on his mind. Why doesn't he go finish him? He knows he's a threat. He knows that he's a danger. He knows he's going to kill more people. Why doesn't he go after him? Especially, the entire reason that Batman doesn't kill Joker in the comics is because he can't cross that line into directly killing anyone. He just can't do that. Or he fears he'll become them. The Joker is the one who has pushed him to that limit the most, like time and time again. If he had gotten to a point where he was willing to cross that line, how was the Joker not dead? You know, that's the kind of thing I mean. But another thing is that, you know, they have all these meta-humans, and yet Superman, who appeared only 6 months or so before, was supposedly the first one that they had ever encountered publicly. And yet, no, apparently they were crawling all over Gotham and the Batman put them away. You know, it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. So much of their continuity doesn't make sense. And Batman v Superman with Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman quit on the human race because she saw how terrible war was and how we had this predilection for it, and we were bent on destroying ourselves. So she was just cutting herself off from the world again and leaving them to their fate. And then she comes back because of the picture being found and everything, and Lex Luthor doing his digging. Which, oh yeah, the perfectly arranged little cameos complete with the logo, that was incredibly dumb. But but yeah, that's her backstory. And then in Wonder Woman, oh no, we're going to directly contradict that. You know, oh, I lost the love of my life, and I saw that mankind would keep fighting even after I beat Ares, but then I beat Ares, and you know, mankind, but then it turns out I hadn't beat Ares, and then I beat Ares, and they did all stop fighting, and the war did come to a close shortly afterwards, and I decided that I was going to stay here being their silent protector for as long as needed, and then in Justice League, they're back to the whole, you abandoned everyone for 100 years, you know? But now stuff comes out about Wonder Woman 2, and it's going to be set during the Cold War, and she's still active, and it's like, they don't have a continuity here. The Wonder Woman films are directly contradicting the other universe films. You see what I'm saying here? This is not a good thing. This universe is a mess. It has no cohesive direction going forward, and no, I don't think it's fixable. Not in its current state. The best chance they had was like trying to soft reboot during the Flashpoint movie, which now isn't going to be Flashpoint, so that's not going to happen. On top of that, which honestly is smarter in terms of where Flash is concerned, but in terms of where the universe is concerned, I don't know. But it can't be fixed. All these directors and writers are off doing their own thing, but then when it comes time for the group activity, as it were, we're on separate continuities. And then that ridiculous nonsense at the end of Batman v Superman, where the dirt starts rising and shaking on his coffin, and everyone's like, oh, he's not dead, and then it turns out, no, he's dead. You know, what was the point of that then? There was no point to that, other than a pointless tease, which doesn't even come to fruition because they have to. And how do they know that the Mother Box can do that? How do they know the Mother Boxes can do half of what they can do? I don't know. I don't know. Just all kinds of convenience in Justice League too. It's Aquaman's not gonna fix anything. Aquaman's just gonna try to be like Thor. Probably, honestly, like Thor Ragnarok now. You know? Especially after they saw how well that did for that type of character. I mean, they were already trying to go for Aquaman being like angrier water Thor, and now they're gonna really go for that. I don't see it being fixable. I really don't. It's not gonna be a thing that happens. DC movies are just whack until they reboot. That's all there is to it. And I can't help but notice one thing that's a disturbing trend with those two. It's what they do to the actors involved. For whatever reason, like even The Rock, okay, even Dwayne Johnson was getting a bit snippy with people when they were kind of going after DC movies. He started getting snippy with them. Zachary Levi, who's one of the nicest dudes out there, period. actually started making fun of people who had beef with Shazam and the production photos. And it's like, that's not like him at all. So, I don't know. I don't want to say these movies contractually obligate you to become an a-hole, but it kind of seems like it sometimes. I just... They need to start over. They really do. They barked this. If they really want it to work, they need to go back and do it right. But they won't. They've got too much money dumped into this now, so they're going to keep plodding forward, and possibly, if anybody is going to lead to superhero fatigue, it's going to be them and Fox, especially when Fox seems to be putting in less and less effort and hanging everything on Deadpool, essentially making fun of everything. That's going to get old fast. Honestly, I know people who love Deadpool 1 who saw Deadpool 2 and thought that, no, you know, just, it's getting stale already. I don't know. I just really don't know. I don't think that they could fix it. I can come up with like 30 different ways that I would have done it differently, but in the end, you know, it doesn't matter, because it's on Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers cares more about making money than they do anything else. And so long as they can make money, they will do that. Just like that Superman game by Rocksteady that's been rumored already. They already kind of slipped that they hired a dude to work on the game who specializes exclusively in microtransactions. So what's it look like? They're going to be putting a shoehorn multiplayer / microtransaction element into a single, what was originally envisioned as a single player game. So I don't even know how multiplayer is going to work with a Superman game. I really don't. But whatever. But that's what I mean. They don't care about the integrity of that game even. They care about making money off that game. Warner Brothers has become very much like the Activision of films, and they're kind of becoming the Activision of games too, more so than Activision. But you know, it is what it is. There's not a whole lot I can do about it. Any further questions, drop a comment, I'll reply. But I think that's actually it for tonight, guys. So I will catch you another time. And it's looking like the second most requested topic here has to do with Spider-Man, so I'll talk a bit on that next time. See ya.